get right into this topic because it's really, really heavy. First of all, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I really appreciate it.
Womb trauma.
Yes.
It sounds heavy.
It is.
What is it?
Womb trauma, we're going to go ahead and go. I like to discuss things from a scientific background and then break it down in layman's terms.
Okay.
So, with that being said, womb trauma is something that's in the mitochondrial DNA that's passed down from mother to daughter.
Okay.
And daughter to daughter, and mother to daughter, and so forth and so on, down the bloodline in the history of women. The reason, this is the only genetic code in the DNA that's actually able to perform what womb trauma is. So, when your mother is born, she's born with all the eggs that she's ever going to have in her body, including you.
Okay.
Once you're fertilized, you're having what? All of the eggs in your body that you're ever going to have. Whatever trauma that your mother experienced throughout her life, because you're already an egg pre-existing in her ovaries and in her womb, you're experiencing that. That's already imprinted into your DNA, right? So then when you're born, right, you're living this trauma, the past traumas that your mom had, then whatever trauma she's going through while she's carrying you, when you're in that incubation period, then when you grow up and develop and become a woman and have your own child, the trauma that you've experienced outside of your mother, outside of your grandmother, outside of your great-grandmother, all the way back to the beginning. So it's very important. This is the scientific background of how it imprints. It's very heavy and it's very deep. It's very important for women to know the power of their womb. A lot of women don't understand that the power of their womb gate is something that's sacred and spiritual, because you're bringing a spirit to life.
That was my next question. Like, how aware do you think society is about womb trauma?
They're not aware. This society is very sexualized in nature, whether it's you're reading a magazine, physical or digital.
Okay.
The entertainment industry, looking at the videos, how promiscuity is promoted on both male and females. I mean, the womb is no longer a sacred place, a sacred house for you and your king. A womb is an open door for the fly-by-night. I just feel like I want to do a little something risque, so I'm opening up my womb gate.
Makes sense. I was listening to an imam one day, and he just was speaking, and he was speaking to a Muslim sister, and she did mention something about women. We were entrusted with this womb for a reason. So it's just it just took me back to that mention, because I guess a lot of us don't realize that we are when some people enter us, they're entering our womb.
And we don't realize that every time that we're having unprotected sex, the man that we're sleeping with, because it's only with male, female to female, this won't transfer.
Gotcha.
Okay, but when a man is entering into your womb gate and there's no barrier of separation, his DNA code is imprinted on your womb. So it's inside of your vaginal walls on a cellular level. That's why it's important for women not to think that it's cute to go out there and have multiple partners at once and to live a very promiscuous lifestyle, because it takes a toll on our bodies because of the way that the Most High created us. So even though we think it's a cliche that women can't do what men can do, it's the truth. We can't. Wow. Genetically and on a scientific level. Wow. And that's just something that we're going to have to deal with. It's nothing that we, for those who identify as a feminist, can change. You can't change it.
Are there signs, like what are some of the evidences that someone is suffering from womb trauma?
Loneliness. If you are always feeling lonely, abandoned, rejected, you have a lack of creativity, if you're insecure, if you're suffering from PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, if you're suffering from fibroids, if you've had miscarriages, if you have a strong odor and you are a clean woman, if you have heavy menstrual cycles, if you have irregular menstrual cycles, if your vaginal walls are dry and there's not enough lubrication. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. sexually transmitted diseases can cause you to have womb trauma. You're not supposed to put soap inside of your vaginal canal. You're not supposed to douche the traditional way that most people think. They go get a Summer's Eve or Max and Gill and they go do that. No, you need a floral-based, herbal-based canal wash. All of those things can change the pH balance of the vagina. The vagina is very acidic.
So I've read some of your seminars and some of your workbooks, and you talk about, when you talk about traumas, just in general, you explain how there is a spiritual side, and there's also a scientific side.
Yes.
Is that part of what's happening here in trauma?
Absolutely. The spiritual and scientific meet and merge with each other during conception. Right, once that spark of life hit, because not only are you dealing with your mother's trauma, but you're dealing with the trauma of your great-great-great-great-grandmother who had to endure harsh times in slavery.
Wow.
That trauma still follows the woman. So men, kings, you out there, when you're dealing with the woman who may have sporadic mood swings or go about her day not feeling celebrated, don't think that it's just something that happened to her in her physical lifetime. It's something that could have been generationally done from the captivity, of the transatlantic slave trade, or even further than that. If you believe in the sacred text of the Holy Bible, we can talk about how womb trauma, we can experience things that happen biblical times, because it's passed down from woman to woman, to female child, and it doesn't stop.
Okay, so because it started so ancient, is there a cure?
The cure is tightening up and addressing, no, seriously, tightening up. We have to take responsibility for our actions as women. And a lot of times we don't want to deal with the truth because we lie to ourselves on a daily basis. We can say, girl, I'm getting ready to go get on that treadmill, and then you don't do it. You're letting off endorphins and hormones in your brain every time you lie to yourself. So that's just not specifically for women, that's for men as well. But as a woman, we have to identify if we really do struggle with feeling anger and rage, if we had any type of sexual aggressive acts happen to us, that on a spiritual level, we're opening ourselves have gotten opened up because it was a violation, clearly, if it was a sexual aggressive act, to the spirit realm. But naturally, we have to identify our triggers. And there's ways that we can learn and teach and grow amongst the sisterhood with that. But first things first, you gotta be real with yourself. And a lot of people lie to themselves.
So when I think of womb, I think of giving birth, and we can give birth to obviously men and women. Can men have womb trauma?
Men cannot pass womb trauma on, but they can experience it very minusculely. Because again, the woman is passing the trauma on. So the man's experience with the womb trauma is just when he's in an incubation period. Our experience with womb trauma is generational.
Gotcha. So that's what kind of keeps this generational curse constantly rolling and just constantly going. Oh my God, it's very interesting. Are there ways that we can prevent this?
You may not be able to prevent what your mother and your grandmother and your great-grandmother has done with their trauma, but you can prevent it from moving so harshly to future generations by, one, addressing whatever issues that you have going on. Being honest with yourself. If you notice that there's an imbalance, if you're crying all the time and you're not understanding why and your life seems to be okay, on a natural level, then of course it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. On a spiritual level, there's a void that needs to be filled. And in order to address that void, it's spiritual and natural things that we can do to help heal the womb. And it's called the spirit work and the natural work. Mind, body, and soul, getting everything situated in a holistic wellness regimen.
That's the healing.
That's the healing. But it's something that's not instantaneous because this is 2020. Okay, and everybody think that you can put something in the microwave and pop out a gourmet meal. When you're talking about womb trauma, that's spiritual, that's science. It's not going to be easy for you just to get over it because you have to dig up the roots of whatever is causing that trauma. And ultimately, that's going to dig up some pain.
And it seems so what it sounds like is we all just have it.
If you are part of the African diaspora, absolutely you have it. Again, we don't even have to go back to ancient times. Like before, we can just start with the transatlantic slave trade because the United States of America don't allow us to explore our history past being a slave. Okay, so we're gonna just talk about that, and we can start there.
Okay.
The trauma that our sisters and brothers and mothers and fathers and grandparents experienced, and I'm using those terms not loosely, because again, that trauma is transferred from mother to daughter, and so forth and so on. So even though it happened to your grandmother, it's like it happened to your mom or your great 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 great. You know, that rape, those beatings, all of that, and some certain people in the community. And I'm one of them, I'm proud to say, I have very strong opinions about my people, right? About what the so-called black person, who we are. And I don't deviate for that, nor do I apologize. And I don't have to apologize for the way that I look, the way that I sound, any vernacular that I want to use, and how I want to communicate, because we have our rights.
We have a right.
We have a right, period. So how you can start on a path of healing this trauma is, one, identify. Just be honest with yourself. If you are a woman that's needy, if you are a woman that's like, nobody ever likes me, if you are a woman that suffers from anger and rage, I was one of them, okay, suffer from anger and rage. You have to address that and say, what is the root cause of this? And it's just introspection. And a lot of us don't like to internalize what we have going on because we want to push it off. We want to think about everything is roses and peaches, and the more you push away your issues, the energy around us, right? Because we're energetic beings, is going to magnify that. So what they say, what you focus on is what is brought back to you, right? Scientifically.
Yeah.
Spiritually, you can't run from a spirit that's trying to plague you. So generational curses are demonic. They're demonic beings, right? For those who don't use the term demonic, you can say jinns, right? These are negative entities that come and know you. They know your family bloodline. They follow it. It's called a familiar spirit, people. And there's a lot of folks out here dealing with familiar spirits within their bloodline and completely oblivious.
And as women, we can host that in our
And we can host it in our rooms and transfer it to our children. And our children may have never experienced a sexual aggressive act. And the reason I'm bringing that up, because I've experienced some sexual aggressive acts as a child. But the behaviors of a person who experienced that can transfer in the womb. So your child may never have had that experience, but they're isolated and living a hermetic lifestyle, or they're always seeking external validation.
The healing sounds like it's therapy.
It's very much so therapy.